Welcome, everyone. We're glad that you can join us today to learn more about the modern languages at Carthage. We wish that we were able to welcome you to campus in person, but until that time, we are glad to be able to host these virtual events with our expert faculty members. Today, we have faculty within our modern language department here who are here to talk with you about the language opportunities, what students are doing both in and outside of the classroom as well. And so I will turn it over to our faculty members and to Greg Baer to get us started. At the end of the presentation, we will have a chance to ask questions through the chat feature. If you are new to using Zoom, at the bottom of the screen, you can use the chat feature or the Q&A section as well. We can't wait to host you on campus, but until then, please enjoy hearing from our faculty, learning more about the modern languages at Carthage. Welcome to all the faculty here today.
Hello, my name is Pascal Rollet. I am a professor of French and Spanish here at Carthage College. I have been here at Carthage since 1993. This was my first job straight out of grad school, and I have never wanted to go anywhere else because this has always been the perfect fit for me. I am a person who likes to teach and be with students, and we get a lot of this at Carthage, thank God. I got my PhD from, I received my PhD from the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. I have 3 boys, and they are, the last one, the little one graduated from Beloit College a week ago, exactly. And I mention this because I believe that it is, you know, having children who are in college or who've just been in college got me closer to my own students at Carthage College. I understand young people a lot better after raising 3 of them. I know a lot of parents here can relate to this. So I wanted to mention these little facts about me. I am French originally, and I have been in the United States for my, you know, studies and stayed here and met my wife, and we lived here. We made our lives here. I'm very happy to be here today and host you. I hope to see a lot of you at Carthage in the future. And I will now turn the image and sound over to my colleague, Darwin Sen.
Hello, everybody. I'm Professor Darwin Sen. I'm the coordinator of the Chinese program. I teach Japanese and Chinese literature and language at Carthage. I had the great fortune to join the Modern Languages team in 2017 after obtaining my doctorate at Penn State University, not UPenn, but Penn State. So let me tell you a little bit more about myself. So as you can see, obviously, I enjoy reading. Whether one reads a fraction of that is another issue altogether. I also enjoy playing guitar, but I am fairly rusty, unlike my colleague Professor Rollet. I also enjoy cooking, biking, and collecting music and playing video games. I was born in the US in Boston, and I was raised in Taiwan before returning to the US to complete my doctoral education. At Carthage, I enjoy teaching students both language and literature, helping our student clubs organize events, as well as supervise senior theses, of which I've done for twice already. It's a really beautiful day out here, and when the day is beautiful by the lake at Carthage, very few scenes can beat it. So likewise, I'm really glad to be here, and hope I can meet and talk to you in person very soon. Next, I will hand over the floor to my colleague, Professor Isabel Rivera Vila. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sen. Hello, I am Isabel Rivero Vila. I have been teaching Spanish and French in Carthage for 16 years, and I feel very lucky to combine my Spanish and French language and cultural background in my career. From my own family and home, I believe in the importance of being curious and learn about other languages and about other cultures. starting with my own 10-year-old twin daughters who share also my background and are completely bilingual, working on the trilingual. It's work. I strive to instill these values not only to my own children, but also to my students, so they can become global citizens. So thank you. Looking forward to meet the students that are listening to us. And so, Herr Professor Dr. Baer, if you would like to continue, please.
Hi, my name is Greg Baer, and I'm the chair of the Modern Language Department. I'm also a professor of German. Some of my colleagues are a little bit modest. They didn't admit to the fact that they actually teach 2 languages. Professor Relay teaches French and Spanish, and Professor Rivera Vila teaches French and Spanish, and Professor Chen teaches Japanese and Chinese. And I'm the one who only teaches 1 language, German. I've been at Carthage for about 24 years, and I am I've lived in Germany over the course of my life, 13 or 14 years altogether. So I've developed a passion for traveling, for reading, for understanding languages and cultures. I've studied other languages. I took Japanese at Carthage for a couple of semesters, so I know what it's like to be on the other side of the desk and to be right at the beginning and to kind of struggle with some of those things. I'm really happy and proud to share some information about the Modern Language Department with you today. And I think we should get started here. So I'll turn it over to Professor Roulet and let him talk about some of the interesting classes that we have.
Next slide, please. Thank you. So I will discuss briefly the language classes at Carthage. These would be the classes where we teach the actual target language, the skills of speaking, listening, and understanding the language and the cultures related to the language we're teaching. At Carthage, the classes are small, sometimes very small. It is not uncommon to have classes of 10 people or 8, 12 people. We make our classes very interactive. It is very clear through the pedagogy and the research that, especially in modern languages, the skill is built through practice. And the language classroom at Carthage recreates the world, the speaking world, where the students are eventually called to go and travel and work, or with whom people are going to work. And so we, if you enter a classroom at Carthage and see the modern language students working, you will see them in small groups preparing a skit maybe, or you will see them interactive in the target language at all times, preparing an exercise or preparing a moment when they're going to be producing in the classroom with the language without the help mostly of any written word. So we are taking the students and making them perform and recreating in context the situation that we want them to perform. Instead of teaching grammar deductively, we bring up the grammatical points in an inductive manner through some practices that interest the students. Our classes are very skill-oriented then. There will never be a lecture. A lot of the grammar is done outside of class, monitored online, but the classrooms are used for practice, whether they are in person or on Zoom. At Carthage, we have had a lot of creative classes in many forms. Carthage has a requirement that students take a symposium, for example. A Carthage symposium, typically taken in the junior year. Your student is gonna be having 2 professors from 2 different disciplines teaching together. And we have done classes in music, classes in cinema, and many different classes that way, study tours included in the symposium. A typical original symposium I'd like to tell you about is the music course, the music and poetry course that I taught with my colleague Amy Haynes in music. We did this course probably 5 times in the past 10 years or so. And in that course, students are writing songs in Spanish and French or French, usually one or the other, but sometimes both, and learning to sing and to play some instruments and record their own music. So this class sees students making 3 songs throughout. These are their projects and their final exam with some reflections on the experience. That's very creative, I think, and different classes that really appeal to the students. There's so many more at Carthage. I'm just telling you the one that I have had, but all my colleagues here have taught many creative symposia that they would love to talk to you about if you want to ask them later. We also bring a lot of culture into our campus, and I would like to point to what my colleague Isabel Rivero Villa does with cinema. She has organized twice the Tournai Film Festival here at Carthage. We're one of a handful colleges in the country that has a festival of movies in French, and people from all over the area come to this, and this has been very successful. The students have been involved. I will tell you about this a little later. Also, this spring, we were excited to present a Francophone African cinema festival, and we are eager to do this very soon. So these are a few ideas. Again, you know, a language class at Carthage, you will not see the professor talk, you're going to see your child talk. We have target language experts at Carthage College. These younger faculty, junior faculty, can come from the countries that speak the language that we are teaching. In French, for example, we have TLEs from Quebec, from France, from Senegal, from Cameroon. Right now we have a TLE from Senegal, one from Cameroon. We try to alternate, and we have a very global vision of the French language that way. So our TLEs are teaching mostly the elementary classes at Carthage, but also the conversation classes that most minors will take at least one of those, and majors also for practice. They are eager to bring their culture. They are a very, very dynamic group. They work on their masters here, Masters of Education at Carthage, and they share their culture and their skills of teaching the language to the elementary students. They're very popular on campus. They bring a lot of life and excitement, and the culture mostly. It is very interesting to the students. Many TLEs become friends with the students that they teach, because they're obviously closer to them in age. Most of them are, between 25 and 30 years old. So the target language expert, as we call them, is a great feature of our campus. We're very proud to have them here. We cherish them, and I think they're very happy here with us, and it shows in the classroom.
So upper level classes are mostly taught in the target language, and we teach politics, economics, society, interpreting written text, art, architecture, music, film, philosophy, culture and intellectual life, many interesting topics. And besides teaching these very important concepts through historical, cultural, societal, artistic, literary perspectives, in a very engaged and connected way, we try to impact our students' learning experience with the use of multimedia, service learning opportunities, and collaborative projects. So for instance, in these courses, my students are encouraged to get involved in the community and participate in learning projects where they teach children in primary schools the importance of learning languages and cultures through the Duolingo app, for instance. I also encourage my students in Spanish to get involved in the Hispanic community in different projects, like assisting teaching English to immigrants in the Kenosa Literacy Council, or finding internships as a student reporter in a Latino journal, or interviewing leaders of the Hispanic community as well. For instance, my student Ryan, she reached to her neighbor that she hadn't met before, who was Guatemalan, a Guatemalan policewoman, and asked for an interview for one of these projects. And she was invited by the neighbor to eat Guatemalan food with her family. and they spent the whole evening together. And then she wrote me an email saying, thank you for this project, because really impacted my learning. I really enjoy this. So in my French classes, I use my interactive documentary, which is a documentary available online that I filmed in my last sabbatical in France. I filmed 20 interviews to a mix, lifelong non-residents and immigrants of Spanish, Cameroonian, Danish descent, so very diverse group. And I had experiences and conversations that I really wanted to share with my students. That's why I did this documentary, so they could access all of this. And in my interviews, I was interested to learn about topics that we cover in our textbooks, like family, traditions, environment, transportation, student life, pastimes, art, film, sports, favorite foods, many topics. And as a result, this web doc, this interactive documentary, has become my own textbook in all of my upper French level classes. So the students' learning is also impacted in the collaboration and exchange with native speakers. For instance, the students that work with my interactive documentary, they have to complete a variety of projects outside of class, interview French native speakers in the community, interview via Skype the people I interviewed in France. So my student Miranda, for instance, she said that this project and the interactive documentary really allow her to connect with the French world in new and engaging ways. So they really appreciate this. In these courses, we also try to help our students start to learn to think like scholars and to think about how to interpret text to find meaning, how to do research and find scholarly sources, and develop critical thinking skills, which is the main focus of what we as scholars in our disciplines do. And finally, as Professor Dr. Rolles was saying, we offer a variety of interdisciplinary courses. In my case, this semester, along with my colleague, a music professor, we offer a class called Music, Film, and Media in Africa, because Africa plays a big role in our French classes, since we not only focus in France, because there are 21 countries in Africa that speak French as well. So we are very interested in teaching that as well. This particular class was taught in English, and the students learn about the usually marginalized media representation of Africa and about cinema in West Africa. And in this class, my students told me that they were shocked at my short documentary films that I filmed when I was in Senegal. They were shocked to see a reality they are not used to seeing because of the misrepresentations of media of this continent. These films show Africa how it is in a more positive light. And that really engaged them, and they really want to explore the continent. They also watched the interviews I had with the film industry leaders in Senegal, and they commented that they like these interviews because they got to see and hear things they wouldn't see otherwise in a regular movie or documentary. And they also appreciated the personal connection I had with these people because it served as a cool learning tool. That's their words. And finally, they were involved in the organization of the first West African Film Festival in Carthage, and they participated with award-winning actors, directors, filmmakers. So now Professor Dr. Bear, maybe?
不，是我。
I'm so sorry, Darwin Sen.
No. Thank you, Professors Rore and Professor Rivero Villa. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about something different. So just on top of highly interactive, small classrooms, experiential learning, and multimedia methods of conducting a class, interdisciplinary perspectives, engagement in community, the lifeblood of modern languages, language learning outside the classroom is always, right, with extracurricular activities and student clubs. What you're seeing here right now is one of the biggest events we have every year. It's the Japanese Cultural Festival that happens in November. And so without these community, the feel of community, the engagement of the students and the professors and the TLEs, target language experts, this is what really makes our learning, language and culture learning environment unique and very strong and tight-knit. All right. First, before I go into clubs, I want to talk a little bit about language tables. Next slide, please. So what are language tables? Language tables are occasions where the professors, the TLE instructors, and the students all mingle at our school cafeteria once a week. We sit down, we get whichever food we like, and we engage in as much conversation in the target language as possible. Topics can vary a lot. This is a great opportunity for students to learn about slang, about informal language, about exceptions to the things that they were just learning in the textbooks. So it's a very lived, lively, and informal environment to learn. Of course, this is a very integral in building familiarity between our faculty instructors and the TLEs, as well as the students. And these events happen every week at a different time, at lunch, and has really been a cornerstone in our department's program towards building a sense of community. On the top left here, I want to talk a little bit about clubs, sorry, before that. On the top left here, we have some students, Chinese club students and Japanese club students working together in our school cafeteria to make dumplings for Chinese New Year. The Chinese New Year party, one that I started with the TLEs when I first arrived here. It's also a fairly well-attended event now. We have a series of cultural forums, along with a huge Chinese New Year party with karaoke and prize sweepstakes, etc., etc. All right, next slide, please. So you've probably already heard this mentioned a few times by Professor Rollet and Professor Rivero Villa. This is our very famous Tournée Festival on campus. I was very fortunate to participate. I believe this was, I joined the second iteration, and I watched a great number of films ranging from the French New Wave masters to more recent documentaries about immigration and religion. It is a really well-attended event and quite an important fixture within our department. This screenings have often repeated, like we have repeated screenings to accommodate both the students as well as the community to maximize our participation. So this is another event that the TLEs and the clubs put together that's very, very important. All right, next slide. Thank you. Yep, on top of festival type activities, on top of our language tables, what our clubs also do very often are field trips. We're located between Milwaukee and Chicago, and between those two cities, you could find almost every culture, every variation of our languages and our cultures from different parts of the say the Hispanophone world or the Sinophone world or Lusophone world. So our geographical location enables us to go to these two cities very easily. On the top left, we have an excursion to a German art exhibition in Milwaukee. The bottom left this was actually the very first field trip I had organized. We went to Chicago's Chinatown. I'm in pretty frequent touch with the Chinese American Museum owners in Chicago's Chinatown. They're always very accommodating, and they stick around to tell us about the area's history as well as the museum's history, because their family was one of the very well-established original families that had settled in the Midwest. All right, so I think that wraps it up for clubs. Next up, there's a little more. I previously mentioned that the TLEs are very integral in this process because they bring cultural habits and cultural knowledge, as well as fresh ideas and just generally a fresh outlook to our students. TLEs often take the lead in hosting events during the regular club meets. On the left, we have TLE Izumi Koide, who graduated in 2019, hosting a traditional tea ceremony. This is our famous Clausen Center. We have a nice scroll by a donor in the back. Starbucks is nearby, but I don't think we respected each other's boundaries that day. On the right, we have Yaka, also a graduated French TLE, had prepared food for the French club. So between the TLEs, the faculty, and the students' own interests, there are a lot of possibilities of what we can do in the community. All right, so I think that does mark the end of clubs. Now I want to talk a little bit about what many consider the crown jewel of Carthage's programs, so the J-term. We're not in Q&A yet, so sadly we won't be able to do too interactive things, but if you could just, you know, quietly on your own screen, raise your hand if you've heard of the J-term at Carthage. If you've gone to the Carthage website, you'll see that, you know, we have a very strong study abroad component, and the J-term is its core feature. The J-term is usually in January. It's a 2-week study tour planned by faculty. So what makes the J-term particularly strong in modern languages is that if you look at us, we all bring our international experience, our personal connections, and our intellectual connections and partnerships. So a lot of these ideas and visit routes are just the total opposite of what you would find under a standard package tour. For example, I personally led a study tour to Tokyo, Japan this winter. My focus was on the interactions between sense of self, identity, and groups in literature, film, and the great metropolitan city. I arranged visits to bring my students to small bookstores. I took them to the LGBTQ culture center, etc. My study tour is the small photo feature on the bottom right. Here we also have study tours to Guadeloupe, to Senegal, and to Madrid. Some of these tours were led by our faculty here, so if you have questions about them later, please feel free to ask them about it. But what's really strong about the J-term study tour is that it often also overlaps with the Carthage Symposium we were talking about, the interdisciplinary courses. Oftentimes, our professors will supply linguistic and cultural backbone, and we would work with a scientist or mathematician, somebody in the business school, in order to put together a thematic study tour, right? Maybe on ecology and culture, right? On food and geography, right? So oftentimes the J-term study tour is the best experience to learn, to be somewhere else, to really immerse quite deeply through very, very unique configurations that especially our modern languages professors provide. Here, we all know what this is. This is the Eiffel Tower. So next slide, please. Oh, and finally, becoming a major in any of the 5 languages in modern languages does, you know, come with a very challenging but fulfilling experience. That is the full semester abroad requirement. For many of our different language majors, many choose to go actually for a full year, especially in Japanese. Oftentimes they would go for a semester at the city, a location, at a partner of our school, and take classes, live, immerse in the local setting, and come back really having their languages and their experiences improved and broadened. So the study abroad is quite expansive. And for example, I teach Chinese, but I recommend my students to consider all parts of the Chinese-speaking world, not just mainland China. You can consider Taiwan, right? You can consider Singapore, et cetera, et cetera. If you'd like to hear more about the study abroad situation with the Spanish-speaking world, which is very, very large, you can please feel free to ask us during the Q&A. So I think this marks the end of my segment. I'd be happy to take questions later. Next up, I think I'm going to throw it back to Professor Rivero Vila.
Thank you, Dr. Sen. So in the final semester, our language majors complete their senior thesis in a variety of topics that they are interested in, from past courses that they took at Carthage or abroad. So an array of topics include politics, literature, history, culture, language, very, very broad variety of topics. So for these classes, students work on translation projects, they do research, and they write their thesis. In this picture to the left, my student Victoria Chance is rehearsing for her senior thesis presentation. And in her thesis, she explored the production of wine and how it helps shape and define the French culture. So her thesis focused on the differences in wine production and social integration within the regions of Bourgogne and Languedoc-Roussillon, and how those differences are reflected in their culture and social practices, revealing that wine is not merely a reflection, but rather a defining characteristic of French culture. The annual celebration of scholarship at Carthage also allows our seniors to make posters and explain their research, prepare for the senior thesis presentations, and act as conversation starters for people who really want to know more about these topics. And finally, at the end of the semester, we have the senior thesis presentations where we invite other professors, all of the language students, and the seniors' parents, and we all engage in enriching discussions after the thesis presentations and celebrate this great achievement together. Thank you. Herr Professor Dr. Bear.
Thank you. So you've heard a lot about interdisciplinarity, people combining different things like music and modern languages and history and modern languages. And a lot of our students do that. We know that the students who come to Carthage have a lot of different interests, and some of them certainly will want to study things beyond the modern languages. And so I've made this word cloud here to demonstrate a little bit some of the ways that our students have done this. These are all fields that our students have had as either a second major or a minor while they were studying one of our languages. So you see that there are some concentrations that are a little bit bigger, like a few more people in education, psychology, maybe not as many people in philosophy or sociology, but you can really combine the languages with any of the other disciplines that we have at Carthage. And because of the way that our language courses are structured and the way that classes are offered, it's certainly possible for you to major or minor in a language and still complete your bachelor degree within 4 years, even if you have another major or another focus that you're really interested in as well. So it's easy to combine those things, and we will certainly help advise you and figure out a way to do that. It's not only a question of you finding the time to do all these things, but also it's a question of how these things fit together. And I think that's one of the most interesting and wonderful things that our students do is they find new and interesting ways to show the interaction and interrelationship between the things they're studying in our classes and the things that they're studying in other classes and other disciplines. Sometimes those kinds of connections continue on throughout the 4 years and then work their way into the senior theses. And so I had a student this semester very interested in political science and especially interested in the politics behind alternative energies. And so he did his senior thesis in German that connected the rise of the Green Party in Germany with the politics relating to solar and wind power in Germany. And he talked about how that was all connected to aspects of German culture that are part of things like fairy tales that you read. And so it was a very interesting thesis. And so I think that there are many examples of those kinds of connections. The most popular minor at Carthage right now is Spanish. That means that there are more students at the college who are minoring in Spanish with other majors outside of our department. But there are also a lot of students who minor in our other languages as well, while they're also studying things like business or psychology or history. And I think that it's always helpful for us to think about what would complement your other interests, which language would complement your other interests, or what other interests would complement your interest in language. Certainly Spanish is a major or a minor that would be great for people who are, say, in fields like education or nursing. But if you're in business, maybe you'd want to think about German or Chinese. And so we really encourage our students to think about those connections. One student who I learned about just recently on the Carthage webpage, because I didn't have him in class, was a young man named Joel, who's Professor Sen's student, who he studied Spanish for 10 years in high school and was very interested in continuing his study of Spanish, and also looking at our interesting program in international political economy. It's kind of a combination of economics and business and political science all in one major. We call it IPE sometimes. And so that's his major. But then he decided he wanted another challenge. He said, I want to study something besides that. And so he added Chinese. And he thought that would be a good complement to these other areas that I'm working on. And so he has started studying Chinese with Dr. Sen and mentioned Dr. Sen as one of the most helpful and wonderful professors at Carthage during his freshman year. Here we have an example of a trilingual young woman with Dr. Isabel Rivero there. All right, so one of the things that we have at Carthage that's a little bit unusual, you see all these students in this picture, they're holding up little signs that have numbers on them. Some of them say 12, I think one of them says 8. These students are telling us how many retro credits they got. Retro credits at Carthage are credits that you get after you take our language placement indicator that help you figure out where you're going to start your language study at Carthage. So if you've had some years of study in high school and you take our placement indicator, let's say you place into 3rd semester of Japanese, and then you skip over 2 semesters, that means that you'll take your 3rd semester Japanese course, you get a grade of C or better, and you'll get 4 credits for that class, but you also get credits for the 2 classes you skipped over. So that would be 8 additional credits. So you'd get a total of 12 credits then for that one class that you took. The maximum number of retro credits you can get is 12. And some students say to me, Dr. Baer, what about AP credits? Does Carthage accept AP credits? And I say, this is a much better deal than any AP credit. Some schools might give you 1 class worth of credits for a good AP score, but with our language placement indicator, we don't need to see your AP scores. You just need to place into a higher semester, skip over a class or 2 or 3, and take the class you placed into, and we'll make sure that you get these retroactive credits. So this is a great way to get a head start on advancing through your 4-year degree. I think I'm going to turn it back over to Professor Rollet now, and he's going to talk about some of the features of online learning at Carthage. Professor Rollet?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much, Dr. Baer. Online learning. Oh my gosh, did we actually do this? Us, modern language professors? You would never have thought we could do it, would you? I mean, we were suddenly, in a matter of days, having to convert our classes, which are interactive, where the students are talking to each other and to us, and suddenly we were not going to be together anymore in the same room. You know, we never thought this would be possible. Well, think again, because this experience, I hope we don't have to go through something like this again, but I'm going to tell you, we've learned a lot about ourselves and our students during this experience, and it has been far from being negative, and I would like to point that to you. I have discovered in this ordeal, in a way, that we could use a lot of the resources that offered Zoom, for example, to be creative and to make the students do more work in the language and talk more to each other rather than less. There is something in Zoom called a breakout room, which is absolutely wonderful for us because it allows us to, in a matter of seconds, take all our students from the class, put them somewhere where no one can see them, and they are speaking in the targeted language together with a function to perform, before returning to the common class. Of course, the professors are jumping from one class to the other randomly, and they are speaking in the language all the time. Well, the biggest challenge we have today as modern language professors, I'm hearing from all my colleagues, is the challenge of making the students comfortable enough to speak. Our students want to excel. They have a very hard time making mistakes. They always apologize and feel terrible for making a mistake in the target language. Well, learning a target language doesn't happen in a few weeks like some ads are falsely claiming. It is a very long process, and it is extremely important that the students get as much practice as possible and do this in very interactive ways. So the breakout rooms have allowed them to be more comfortable, not having anybody watching them. And even the class online, as maybe because of the use of technology that the students now, breathe, basically. I have 3 children using them constantly. I understand that the students were very comfortable with their phones and their screens. And I have seen wonders in seeing, because we had half of the semester with the students in the class, and suddenly from one day to the other, I mean, 2 weeks, we were back with them online. And I've seen students who were more shy in the first half of the semester suddenly open up. My students have opened up this second half of the semester like I've never seen them before. They were more at ease. Thank God, I hope that we go back in the classroom. Of course, nothing beats this, but I'm going to use Zoom again, and I'm going to have some sessions and maybe even use Zoom within my own classroom to have the students do some stuff separately while not being too far, but still feeling comfortable. So it's been a blessing in disguise here, this horrific pandemic. As I like to think that to be a modern language teacher, we really have to be creative. We don't open books here at Carthage and read from them to the students. We don't do this. We don't have students opening books in class and reading something. No, the books are, the work with books is done outside of class, and the class is done to interact. And the use of the technology that we have had to been forced to use here has actually allowed us in modern language to find some really creative ways to get the students become more interactive. I want to say thank you for the pandemic, but I've certainly learned something that I'm really happy I have. And I am not done learning today. Ashley showed me how to turn this into a walkie-talkie, believe it or not, the Zoom thing. So there's going to be a lot of fun stuff that I'm looking forward to keep refining with this Zoom. I hope we see everybody soon face to face, but we haven't wasted our time, I promise you that.
So 4 years of college and it's time to graduate. So I wanted to show you this group of students who graduated a couple of years ago from Carthage. These are all German majors, as you can tell by the German colored stoles around their necks, along with a couple of professors who snuck into the picture. But just to give you an example of the kind of students that we have, in this particular cohort of students who are graduating with the major in German, they've presented original research, they've participated in varsity athletics, they've studied abroad, they've helped start online businesses, had internships, written fascinating senior theses, and explored topics they never would have imagined that they might be interested in when they started as freshmen. So a lot of different pathways to this goal of graduating from Carthage. And then after graduation, they also took a lot of different pathways. The people in this picture have won a Fulbright scholarship to live in Germany for a year, served in the Peace Corps in Kyrgyzstan, gone to graduate school, worked for nonprofits, and in the fields of law, education, and marketing. So there's just a lot of different possibilities there, and a lot of different kinds of things that they can experience at Carthage and also after they graduate. I want to focus a little bit too on the after graduation part. And one of the things I'm proud of about our modern language department, that the students who have graduated in our department have a really high record of winning Fulbright scholarships. Fulbright scholarships allow people who just recently graduated to go live and work and study and teach abroad for a year, fully paid by the US government. And Carthage has a very good record of having students win these scholarships, and a large number of the students who win them are from our modern language department. But after Carthage, they don't just win scholarships, they go into all kinds of interesting and important careers. These are just, this is just a partial list of some of the industries where our graduates currently work. And so you can see it's really all over the board. There are just a lot of different kinds of things that you can do with a degree in modern languages. I want to just highlight one student who I think is got an interesting story, and it illustrates well how students really flourish after they leave Carthage, and it illustrates the value of the Carthage education. This is Adam, a picture of Adam in front of the cathedral in Cologne while he was studying in Germany. And he was a double major in German and history. And after college, he went to work in the field of logistics. I didn't even know what logistics was before Adam helped me understand that. It's basically the field of moving goods across borders and around into places so that they're where they need to be at the right time, in the right quantities, at the right price. And so a lot of that happens between countries. And after he graduated, Adam knew he'd like to try to work in Germany if possible. He just got online. He looked up all the German companies that had German connections in the area where he lived in Northern Illinois. And he started contacting them, sending out resumes, and finding out who might be interested in hiring someone like him. And even though he didn't know anything about logistics, the company that eventually hired him said they hired him because he had the kinds of skills that so many of our Carthage graduates have: critical thinking, problem solving, flexibility. But he also had the things that we in the modern language department pride ourselves in helping the students develop: cultural sensitivity and excellent language skills. And so Adam joined this company. He worked for 3 months learning about logistics here in the US, and then they sent him over to Germany so that he could work there. And he stayed there for 3 years, learning a lot about logistics, really helping the company improve its business there, and then came back to the States, where he still continued to work in the field. So that's just one example of the value of the liberal arts education at Carthage, and a value of the modern language education at Carthage as well. So I think at this point, we are ready to start taking some questions from some of you, if you should have them. And I think Ashley's going to join us again and see what kinds of things people are interested in hearing more about. Ashley, are you there?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for that wonderful information. And so for those of you who are listening, you are welcome to use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. There's also the Q&A section as well. You know, one of the questions that has come in is, what year do students typically study abroad? Is that after their first year, second, or third year?
I'll answer that. Typically, students study abroad during their junior year. In some of our languages, it's important that they do that because of certain requirements about the universities where they're studying abroad, or the programs that they're on. And so they need to have been at a US university or college for 2 years before they're allowed to go over. Then also there's a question of the calendars, of the university calendars abroad, not always meshing up with the university calendars in the US. And so if a student is only going to be studying for a semester abroad, they tend to, in German at least, go for the spring semester of their junior year. But depending on their language skills and their preparation, and then the particular country or university where they're going to be studying, they sometimes might go during their second year at Carthage, and they occasionally will go during their fourth year at Carthage. But I would say the majority of the students study abroad during their junior year or their third year.
Awesome, thank you. Claire is asking, what is the senior thesis that you have mentioned?
I'll start again here and others can chime in. The senior thesis, so at Carthage, all students have to do some kind of senior thesis or senior project. It's not just for modern language students. And so it's a way for you to show the faculty and the professors in your department that you have spent 4 years learning and growing, and that you have become kind of an expert in some areas of the field, and that you've started to think like someone who has studied modern languages for 4 years. So in our majors, we're looking for senior theses that show that students know how to interpret texts, that they have some kind of ability to understand some nuances of culture and language that are not always apparent to someone who hasn't spent the time studying the language and the culture and studying abroad like our students have. I sometimes tell people that that we want to make them into, help them develop into insiders, people who have like sort of inside cultural knowledge, rather than people who are standing outside the culture trying to figure it out. And so that's what we hope that our students will develop. We have different kinds of theses depending on the language. So in German, our students usually do something where they are interpreting a specific text, whether it be a literary text like this semester, fairy tales, or a play. We've also had students interpret posters, advertisements, music, rap music a couple years ago. So there's just all kinds of different things, but using the skills that they've developed. In French, I know that they do some translations as part of their senior thesis. So that's another thing that can be sometimes very useful and helpful after you graduate. Does anybody else want to chime in about the senior thesis?
I'd be happy to talk.
Go ahead.
So when Professor Baer says that the senior thesis is kind of an expression of what you've learned and what you've become, he really means that. It's not just for all the language majors. If you want to write a 20-page, 25-page essay, we will supervise you for that. If you want to do something creative, you want to do something multimedia-based, like Professor Rivero Vila's student with wine cultures, we'll do that. Recently, I just finished supervising one of my Chinese seniors whose thesis project, she was really, really interdisciplinary. She was a Chinese major with a chemistry double major and a dance minor. So she had finished her chemistry thesis the fall before, in the spring. What she did was a 3-part thesis project. It had she explored how Tai Chi Chuan, right? How Tai Chi could be reinterpreted and combined with modern dance. So the project had 3 parts. She had a brief history of Tai Chi, exploration of a modern history of Tai Chi, how it got to the West, how it spread, how it became official in China. And then since she studied abroad a semester in Chengdu City in Sichuan province, and where she took a Tai Chi Chuan class, she wrote on a kind of detailed reflection now with some new theoretical tools that she gained. And finally, she wrote a rationale for a dance piece coordinated across a crew of dancers, everybody separately in quarantine, and premiered that. So a lot of things that you can do. In the Japanese major, students have produced detailed pamphlets, travel pamphlets on the season. Some have translated, compiled, and created cookbooks in Japanese and English. So there's a very creative side to this process, and if a long essay is your thing, that's great. If it's not, it can work as well. So thanks.
I would like to say something. Can you hear me? Okay. Just want to say, Claire asked the question. Claire wanted to know, what is the senior thesis? Claire, it is a class. It's 4 credits. You have to be super careful when you ask a professor to talk about what they really want to talk about, okay? But it's just a course, you know, and you do what you want in there and you do great. No, we really supervise. In French, we make the students do a translation. They all work on translation skills. This is an increasingly important skill to have. We've noticed with students being called to work with French. So we teach them to translate, and then they do a project like my colleagues have described. Thank you for your question, Claire.
Great question there, Claire. Thank you. So if a student knows they want to do a language, but they're undecided on which language, how would you advise them?
I think that if I were to advise them, I would say that they should think about what kinds of things they're interested in doing with that language, and where they think they're interested in doing those things that they're interested in. So, you know, I know that, for example, if I were a student who was very interested in doing social work, I might say, well, gosh, there's a large population of people in Kenosha who speak Spanish, and there are social workers needed who will work with them. So speaking Spanish might be a really good thing. But if I knew that, for example, I was interested in publishing, I might say, gosh, you know, when I look at publishing and the leading publishing in all fields in the world, many of the leading publishers are from Germany. And so Germany, maybe it's not as well known, but they publish a lot of books in all kinds of different fields and technology and special fields. So maybe learning German would be something that might be more useful. And at Carthage, we have a place called the Aspire Center. It's like a career center on steroids. They are really good at helping you, and you also will be connected up with someone early on in your time at Carthage who will help you figure out some of these things related to what your interests are and what direction you should be going, and help you use the results of those interest surveys to chart your course through Carthage and find the classes and the majors and the minors that will be best suited to help you achieve your goals.
I would add that usually we recommend that you keep the language that you started studying in high school if you had a decent experience. And if you did not have a decent experience, give it a chance at Carthage. It's going to be probably very different with the way we teach. But overall, it is usually recommended not to hop from one language to the other superficially and dig into one. But nothing prevents many people from starting from scratch. I want to talk about Aaron Bollinger, my really interesting student that just graduated last week. He came to Carthage and we gave him a scholarship when he had absolutely no French at all. We made him work in the summer by himself, and then so he could start in 102 in the second semester, you know, from beginning at Carthage, and be able to graduate with the French major in 4 years. This guy started without speaking any French, and he speaks fluently now, and he's an impressive scholar and overall Carthage student. But this person came, and I interviewed him during the modern language competition, and we could not do the interview in the language, but I had enough conversation and I trusted that guy. We gave him the scholarship, and he has not let us down. So it is possible to start a language from scratch at Carthage and graduate with the major in it, but usually it's better to keep the language that you started with.
Thank you. Again, for those watching this presentation, you're welcome to ask a question in the chat feature. One question, you know, as we are wrapping things up here, you know, what would you all say, what makes Carthage different or unique as students are looking at our language programs in comparison to other institutions?
Anyone else want to jump in? I'll start and say a couple of things. I mean, you've heard some of them already today. I think for our majors, the required study abroad semester, and you know, it's an academic semester. It's not just sort of traveling around or taking some classes in French grammar or something, but it's actually studying at a university and mixing with the French students and taking real classes. So that's a really important piece of it. Claire just asked in the chat also if minors need to study abroad, but the minors are not required to, but many of them do. And if they can't spend a whole semester abroad, they usually try to do at least a J-term study tour so that they're able to go to the country where they're interested in the language and culture for at least a few weeks. So, so study abroad is number one, I think, a unique feature. Number two, I think, is our Target Language Expert program. And I think that that is something that's unusual because not only are they in the classes with us and teaching conversation classes, and leading extracurricular activities. They're also just on campus, and you'll see them in the cafeteria, you'll see them in the library, you'll see them at Starbucks and Einstein's when you go to grab a snack, and you have a chance to sort of become friends with them. And often our students who, especially our language majors, tell us that you know, they got to know our TLEs when they were freshmen, and then by the time they were juniors, those TLEs had returned home, and so they had a kind of a built-in friend in the country that they were going to be studying in when they got there, and that can be a really wonderful thing. So you're not going to a place where you know nobody. The other thing I think that is really interesting is you've heard today about the ways that we teach, and there's so much creativity in our teaching, whether it's online or in person, the use of multimedia, the great inventiveness of people like Professor Rivera Villa with her interactive documentary, or Professor Rollet with his music. He didn't talk too much about it, but he's really a kind of a pioneer in developing music that he writes and plays and sings to use in classrooms, and people all around the country and other parts of the world even use some of the work that he has prepared. And so I think between the innovative teaching and the study abroad and the TLE program, we have a lot to offer that's new and unusual and different, and really makes its mark.
I would add that it's just the kindness of my colleagues and, you know, concentration, focus, passion that we bring to our students. That's, to me, what's, as a junior colleague, what has really moved me very often. So you come here, you know, you're studying with people will get you a good direction, and that you're in great hands. So
wonderful. Thank you for all this great information. We have reached our 1 hour time limit for this afternoon. But if any of our guests here this afternoon would like to meet with our faculty members individually, we're happy to set up a Zoom meeting, a one-on-one phone call. We also will be sharing their email addresses on the website. This video will be posted to our website by the end of the week with their email addresses attached. But we thank you to all of our faculty for joining us this evening, and for our students who were able to watch as well. And we can't wait to have you back on campus soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.